Right then, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be talking about how to improve dragons without making them extremely tedious. I'm going to try and use abilities that I will be giving to these dragons that already exist on other monsters in the monster manual without too much homebrew. There's going to be some sort of homebrew abilities that are inspired by existing abilities, but anyone can be like, well, I've got a homebrew ability for my dragon, which makes them completely immune to all damage, and they one-shot everybody. Because at the end of the day, there's an infinite number of ways to make dragons challenging. You could have them never land during combat. You could give them 9th level spells. You could make them completely indestructible, but I don't want to do that. I want to make them still feel like you're fighting a typical monster manual dragon, but with a few extra little abilities that make them that much tougher. So let's start with Wyrmlings. Now, Wyrmlings honestly don't need any changing at all. I actually think Wyrmlings are fine as they are. They're actually pretty challenging for their CR, given that they have breath attacks and they can fly as low-level monsters, so we don't really need to change Wyrmlings. I just think they're perfectly balanced. Young dragons. For the sake of this video, we will be using a red dragon as a template, but this ability can apply to any chromatic dragon, though you don't really need it for metallic dragons because we're going to steal the metallic dragon's second breath weapon. We ideally want the breath weapon to be utility, not damage, as chromatic dragons already do a ton of damage with their normal breath attacks. For a red dragon, I was thinking something like a smoke breath, which could be centered on the dragon with a 20-foot emanation or radius, heavily obscuring the dragon, though it wouldn't necessarily move with the dragon. This has great synergy with the fact that dragons get blind sight, so it won't be hindered by its own breath. Meanwhile, player characters will have trouble targeting the dragon as they can't see it, and will have disadvantage on attack rolls against it as long as it remains in that area. The smoke breath would last until the start of the dragon's next turn. This works with any chromatic dragon. You could use the existing metallic dragon secondary breath weapons, or you could invent your own that fits the theme of the dragon. For example, a green dragon could have a breath that inflicts the poisoned condition or produces illusions or something. But for the sake of this video, we're sticking with red dragons and their smoke breath. Adult dragons. This is where we really start building a proper dragon boss. We'll keep the same smoke breath from the young dragon, but we will increase the radius to 30 foot or more. However, in 2024, the multi-attack of metallic adult dragons allows them to replace one rend attack with use of either spell casting or use of their second breath weapon. So we're going to do the same for our chromatic dragon. They will be able to make 3 rend attacks, replacing one with use of smoke breath or scorching ray, as that's what the adult red dragon gets in the 2024 monster manual. And again, we don't want to change too much about the actual monster stats. We're just giving them a few extra abilities here and there, and so we will add a smoke breath into the adult red dragon's multi-attack. On the topic of spellcasting, we can keep the same spells that the 2024 red dragon has, or whichever dragon you're trying to improve, but I'm not actually a massive fan of dragons having all the same damage type with their spells as their breath weapon, because at the end of the day, if you're going into a dungeon to fight a dragon, you're probably going in there prepared with things like fire resistance if it's a red dragon, and so the red dragon having a bunch of fire spells is kind of negated by the fact that the players have already prepared for the fact that this dragon uses fire. I know fire spells are obviously on theme for a red dragon, but I think giving them a few utility spells would work really well. They do already have command, which they can make really good use of because they can do it as a legendary action, so that's fantastic. But I think that a lot of dragons could benefit with having something like haste and Misty Step. Misty Step allows them to escape things like Force Cage and just gives them that extra bit of maneuverability, and haste makes them a really, really big threat, but it's also a weakness for them if you can remove that haste, because then they become stunned. Now, adult dragon scales are meant to be stronger than any man-made armor. right? Swords and spears are supposed to bounce off these things. That is not really reflected very well in 5e, because all they've done is given the dragon an AC that's higher than 18, because 18 would be, plate armor, which is the best armor type you can get. In this case, the adult red dragon has 19 AC, but honestly, I don't think that monster AC is actually very good at high levels, because a player with the right build and equipment can get into the high 20s and low 30s for AC quite easily, whereas monsters rarely go above 22. I think the Tarrasque has 25, but an ancient red dragon has 22, which isn't that impressive when player characters can get a plus 14 to hit at level 20 and multi-attack. But again, I'm not here to change the stat blocks of these monsters too much, so we're going to keep the AC. I'm just here to sprinkle in some new abilities to make them tougher. So, to reflect a dragon's mighty scales, we're going to give it resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Straight up. Not non-magical physical damage, all physical damage, except for damage dealt by dragon-slaying weapons. This makes dragon-slaying weapons so much more important and impactful. Dealing an additional 3d6 damage is not bad, but it's really not that impressive against creatures with very high hit points, like adult or ancient dragons. It doesn't really feel like a dragon-slaying weapon. But with this mechanic, it will, as you will not only be doing the extra 3d6 damage, but it won't be resisted by the dragon either. So the difference between someone with a regular +2 longsword and someone with a longsword of dragon slaying is going to be extremely apparent. And this is the idea I want to go with adult and ancient dragons, is I want these things to be really, really difficult to kill if you don't have the right weapons and tools. The second ability we're going to be giving to adult dragons is magic resistance. It's never made much sense to me that they don't have magic resistance, as they are magical creatures that can magically affect an entire region that they live in, as with their regional effects. I know magic resistance is usually given to extra planar entities like devils and celestials, but it's also given to constructs, and to be frank, the saving throws of the 2024 dragons suck. The adult red dragon's highest saving throw is a +8 to strength. They make up for this with their legendary resistances, however, that becomes extremely susceptible to cheese, as a caster can just spam level 1 spells like Dissonant Whispers to eat through them in no time at all. And frankly, I think if we want dragons to be a threat, we need to avoid this style of play where all the caster's doing is just level 1 spell, level 1 spell, level 1 spell, until there's no legendary resistances left, and then they just slap them with a save or suck spell, which the dragon's probably going to fail because the saving throws aren't good. However, to make it less tedious for your spellcasters, in the same way that dragon slaying weapons can bypass the physical resistances of the dragon, you could also add something like a dragon slaying staff into your game, or a wand or some other spellcasting item, which can bypass the magic resistance. But overall, if you fight an adult dragon and you don't have any dragon slaying equipment, then you're going to have to come up against its physical damage resistance, its magic resistance, the secondary smoke breath as well, and it's going to be an extremely difficult fight. It won't be impossible, but very, very difficult, to the point where even a high-level group without dragon-slaying weapons might struggle to actually beat an adult dragon. Ancient dragons. These things are supposed to be near godlike. These are the apex monsters of any region they reside in. Okay, these are the most legendary of the monsters, in my opinion. Like, ancient dragons are not supposed to be random encounters. These are supposed to be the tyrant emperors of entire regions. Like, these are named powerful entities, usually the BBEG for an entire campaign, and they should be difficult to defeat even with dragon slaying weapons. So we'll keep the smoke breath and increase the radius to 60 feet, so this should be big enough to pretty much fill the entire layer, or the entire room of the layer that you're fighting him in. We'll keep the physical damage resistance, which can still be bypassed by dragon-slaying weapons. However, we are going to be borrowing an ability from the Rakshasa. Limited magic immunity. The ancient dragon should be immune to spells of a certain level or lower. This will completely prevent level 1 spell spamming. Now, you don't want it to be too tedious, So I'd say give them immunity to spells of 3rd level or lower. I believe the Rakshasa is immune to 5th level or lower, which is, it's a little bit too high. You can keep it like that if you really want. You know, if you've got a very high spellcasting group and they're just constantly annihilating everything with spells, maybe you will keep it as 5th level or lower, maybe even 6th level or lower. I really should put those spellcasters in their place, but you don't want it to be an unfun fight. It needs to be fun, it needs to be rewarding, and so I'd say 3rd level or lower. Obviously, though, this doesn't count the spells that they cast on themselves, so if the dragon casts haste on itself, it's not going to be immune to its own haste. They can also keep their magic resistance too, so even if your wizard casts a 4th level spell, the dragon still has advantage against it. Alternatively, you could use the 2024 Rakshas's ability, which would replace magic resistance, as they get greater magic resistance, which lets them automatically succeed on any spell or magic effect that is used on them without their permission, and spell attacks automatically miss. But I don't really like this ability, as it means your spellcasters can't do anything at all, and it just feels kind of sucky, to be honest. So I would stick with limited magic immunity. Now, dragon slaying staffs will still bypass the magic resistance. It's up to you whether you would let them bypass the magic immunity as well. It just depends. You know, obviously tailor everything to your group. If it's not going to be completely trivializing your encounter, then sure, you should make the dragon slaying staff bypass the magic immunity as well. But if you're worried that it will, then keep the magic immunity, so at the very least, even though the spellcaster can still do maximum damage with 4th level spells or higher, they're not going to be able to just spam level 1 save or suck spells. So in conclusion, without dragon slaying weapons, dragons should be nearly impossible to beat. You could send your player characters on quests to get their own dragon slaying weapons just in preparation to fight a single ancient dragon. The ranger might know of a dragon-slaying bow belonging to some elven king in the woods. The barbarian might know of a dragon-slaying axe in the mountains belonging to a barbarian chieftain. The wizard might know of a dragon-slaying staff belonging to a lich in its crypt. There's a lot of potential with the quests and the journeys that your characters can go on just to prepare for a single dragon encounter, and I think it makes the dragon that much more threatening. You could have an adult dragon or ancient dragon show up, destroy a village, the players try to fight it, their attacks are being resisted, their spells are being resisted, there's nothing much they can really do against this dragon. It really feels like an actual threat they cannot fight, and so after that, they go to all the corners of your world to try and find dragon-slaying weapons so they can finally come back and actually defeat the dragon. Because normally, I'm afraid in 5e, if your players are sat there and they're higher than like level 5 and an adult dragon turns up to attack a village, they will just spam it with spells, probably do loads of physical damage, and it's gonna die. It's going to die. Even an adult red dragon can be defeated by a level 5 group in 5e, as long as they're able to survive its breath attack. But with just a few new abilities, none of which are really homebrew. I mean, the smoke breath is probably the most homebrewed ability we came up with here, and even then it basically just works like the darkness spell. These can make the dragon nearly impossible to beat without changing the way that the dragon fights. Their relatively weak defensive stats are covered by the physical damage resistance. Their susceptibility to spells is covered by magic resistance and magic immunity. And the underwhelming nature of dragon slaying weapons in 5e is covered by the fact that they can negate these abilities. I have been Brass, thank you very much for watching. Like if you liked it, subscribe, or you can shoot me with a dragon slaying arrow if you hated it.